Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Deciphering Growth. We appreciate you joining us to have another discussion on the holidays and some of the challenges that can come with navigating the holidays and trauma. Uh, Sorry, I have to stop because I'm about to start laughing. Tiffany just pulled up her water bottle that has a bee on it. And if you guys don't know anything, I love bees so much. And I have my bee coffee mug that's got like bees on it. Yeah, I'm a huge bee fan. So for all our bee listeners, thank you for being here. We appreciate all the buzz you've been generating. I'm gonna stop. I'm so sorry. This is like we swore we were going to do this. So anyway, we'll get down to business. So we have been focusing on this just with like great intention. Um, this is a very challenging time for a lot of people. Um, I don't source this definition, but to me, the holidays start in Halloween and will go through the new year. So like the first week in January, you've got like the winter solstice, you've got all types of holidays. Like Diwali. I mean, we just there's so many holidays and celebrations that happen in this current time frame. And so with that comes, I think, a lot of times for connection, a lot of space, hopefully lots of good food. This is not a food podcast, but it sure could be. But also can come the stress and some of the challenges with managing them, especially trauma. Tiffany, anything you would want to add?
Yeah, I was just, you were talking about holidays and you mentioned Halloween. I was like, ooh, totally forgot about that one and like how triggering it can be to see like all those scary things walking around for some people.
Yeah, I mean the mask, decorations. That's a great one. I mean, even just I think of those little sound machines and they have screams that are meant to be silly and scary. And this is not a judgment on those who partake in that for fun. It's just if you work with survivors of trauma, some things maybe don't seem as fun, or some of the haunted houses and things, and people running up and hiding and trying to scare. I also, just as a substance use counselor, really consider Halloween to January like the red zone. A lot of relapses happen in this time because a lot of those reminders of the connections we are missing or the ones we don't have, or even with ourselves, those reminders come up. So it's just a very tough time of year. And if you kind of track with Halloween, is normally when the season shift starts to happen with some of the colder temperatures, darkness. It really does impact us mentally. And it just all that kind of going at the same time, and you throw in all these other situations, it starts to kind of build a higher stakes situation table. And I want to make sure Tiffany gets a chance to tag in as well here. I usually hog the mic, so I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yeah, no, I'm just shaking my head in agreement and I was just thinking about looking out my window like, man, yeah, I noticed it was colder this morning and I got up and I was like, I don't want to like leave my really warm, humble cocoon and that winter. I know it's not officially winter, but I feel like it's sneaking in and that winter trudge approaching.
Yeah, I have to remind myself I love the pretty side of fall with like pumpkins and Halloween candy. I don't love the cold, rainy, windy, dark days.
Mm.
Um, so we're just trying to be as helpful as we can. But today is more for the focus is like you're going to be in some situations by choice. We are not going to focus in on maybe surprise situations where maybe you show up to pick up maybe your kids, and then there's someone that you're like, oh my gosh, right. We're not going to focus in as much as that, but we're going to focus in on like planned interactions, planned opportunities. So just to frame this holistically, you do not have to be anywhere. Really, the only things you say have to do is if you're a parent, you're responsible for your children if they're with you, and you're responsible for any animals that you might have. Those are a have to. Like, I have to feed my dogs. I have to make sure my daughter is safe and know where they are. But you don't have to do any of these events, despite what family situation you may have grown up in, religious institutions you're connected to, community institutions. Like, there's really it can feel this way, but there's nothing you have to do. So I just want to give a shout out to anyone that is maybe in their healing journey, that is kind of finding out there's some things that maybe you aren't going to be able to do this year safely. Really have empathy for you, and it's okay that you can't go do things that maybe this time last year you could have done with ease. It's okay that that's where it is, and it's also okay that you feel upset by that. And so I just think about some of my substance use clients, like they know they can't go to certain holiday parties because there's lots of alcohol or drugs or just triggers. So it doesn't have to be a situation where it's like, oh, it's unsafe because there's weapons around, or it's unsafe because there's drugs. It can be unsafe because seeing certain people, seeing certain sites, that is a very challenging, overwhelming thing, and it's not helpful to experience when you're already in a stressful state.
Yeah. And I think it's just a lovely reminder that, yes, you don't have to do the holidays. Like, they're just a date on a calendar that we're told we're supposed to celebrate. There's no law that's going to punish you for choosing not to.
Yeah, you get to choose as an adult much of what you do and don't
Mhm.
do. And so celebrating or not celebrating, recognizing or not recognizing. And again, if you're someone who really loves the holidays, you love every Hallmark movie with the same plot, that's fine. It's a little joke, a little shade of Hallmark. But they make money. So who's the shade really going towards right now, right? But it's okay if you love the holidays. It's just holding space for people who don't. And that I don't think would maybe cost anyone anything to just hold space. So a really great example of this is just if you have people in your life and you're the person that loves holidays, loves seeing, just inviting people, guilt free, not passive aggressive, not the shame. Just hey, be lovely if you can come. If not, no worries. We'll see you. Maybe at the next thing or this. No problem, no pressure. That's a really kind invitation. Also, like I just have to. This is a substance use counselor this time of year. If someone wants a drink, they'll let you know. So if you've asked them, hey, do you want any wine, beer, da, 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 and they say no, you don't need to keep following up. They know you have wine and beer if they wanted one. Because sometimes it's very hard to say no in a situation like that. And sometimes people in recovery feel like it draws a lot of attention. Um, like I have friends and family that can't drink not because of a recovery thing, but because of health reasons. Because of health reasons, they really should not be drinking alcohol with some of the health conditions they have. So just not making an assumption, but also just like respecting people's ability to say no and let you know what they need.
Yeah.
Anything on that, Tiffany?
Yeah, I won't lie. It's really, really frustrating when I go to places and they're like, "Oh, do you want this? Do you want that? Or how about this? How about that? Have you tried this? Have you tried that?" I'm like, I am an autonomous adult. I don't need you to check in like I'm two.
It sometimes can feel
No shade at
dishonoring.
teenagers, though.
Yeah, and if you have like people you're very closely connected to, and I don't mean like you think you are, but like, hey, that's like one of my dearest friends, and they're going through something, checking in on them in a genuine way, that can be nice. But there's a difference in like, I don't know, Tiffany and I were at a holiday party and she knows I get anxious in big groups. Tiffany comes to me and is like, hey, you good? Like you okay? That is different than like cousin Jimmy. I don't have a cousin Jimmy, but if I did, I haven't seen him in 7 years, and he comes up to me like, "Hey, what's wrong? What's going on?" Probably not going to tell cousin Jimmy at that point what is going on. So that just feel like we have to have some framework for this. First, just right out of the gate, you don't have to be there. So if you go and you're like, nope, can't do it, just go home. Better to trust your gut and instincts if you know, hey, this really doesn't go well. I don't know if I can do this. If you're someone that's like working on being in more social situations and you feel like you never can do that, that's probably a good thing to either work on with a therapist or with someone to go with you and try to support you to be there. But I'm talking like an every time thing, not like a certain situation, but literally any group space setting that's overwhelming. That's probably something to evaluate a little bit. And I'm not talking about introverts who would rather be at home with a good book. And I'm like, I mean, literally, like you can't go anywhere if there's more than three people. Yeah, I'm not trying to shame Tiffany here. That's all. I'm trying to throw my context in.
Yeah. And I think, but also recognizing like that's okay. Like if you are an introverted, a more introverted type person, like it's okay if you only go and exert X amount of time or X amount of energy and then protect your peace. Like we're not all built the same and that we all love to be surrounded by other humans, and that's okay.
Take a moment if you're listening just to kind of try to store some of this. Um, it's something that I think people forget that it's okay to approach things a different way, doing what's best for yourself. So I think Tiffany's really onto something.
It always reminds me, this might be a really weird analogy, but I always remind people, and this might resonate more with people who play games than people who don't. But like, Eric, have you ever played a video game? Do you have a favorite video game?
I play Fortnite almost every day, so thank you very
Okay.
much.
So, Fortnite, when you encounter a challenge, do you keep approaching the challenge the exact same way all the time?
If I'm tired, yes, but usually no.
So that's what I always encourage people. I'm like, if you know in a video game you have multiple avenues of approach to an issue, what makes our lives any different? There is no set one direct path. We can choose different paths of how to approach things that crop up in our life, just like we can choose to either repeat an action or change how we interact with something in a video game.
I want to say no, if I understand it right.
Wait.
Wait, am I right? I don't feel like I answered right.
It's like you
Can you
have
say,
the ability to approach problems in multiple ways. Is my
yeah, I have that. Sorry, I didn't understand the question. That's funny.
It's okay.
This is the beauty of like live recording that we don't like set these up in case anyone had a like doubt that these really are live. That's good. Yes, there are more options to handle a problem. But I'm gonna sip some coffee.
I mean, I could have worded that really poorly too. So like,
No, I don't think the issue um what's your wording? I'm so sorry. No, I do think there's multiple ways of solving the same issue or alleviating the issue. And I think it's just getting creative. This may sound dumb, but I talk a lot with my clients about just go to the bathroom. You don't have to be in there an hour, but just even a few minutes can maybe help your nervous system like re-regulate or just decompress, like catch your breath, like watch your favorite TikTok, or if you hate TikTok, look at a picture of your cat and dog. And if you don't like pets, then look up a photo of your favorite sports team if they're doing good. As a Colts and Bengals fan, it's not a good time to do that. So maybe not that, but just something that can reground you, and then you can go back out, going for a walk, stepping outside. Um, Also, just maybe coming in after it's kind of started a little bit, and then leaving a little. I mean, there's ways of kind of trying to handle some things. But I think what we want to make sure we focus on today is that if it's not safe for you to be in that situation and you're not at the space to handle that without mountains and mountains of work, you do not have to go. You don't.
yeah.
And there may be something where it feels like, well, I want to do it, and then I feel like I should. Like, if you still want to go, it's okay that you know going in a situation with triggers is tough. It's just honoring that inner wisdom and not shoving it down and denying it.
Yeah. And like, just as a real life example, I had made a commitment to do something, but because of like flights and not feeling well and like other moving parts, my brain was like, "You need the afternoon. Like, this is not smart."
Yeah.
And I still felt guilty for like having to cancel the event, but at the same time I was like, I feel better knowing I am
Mhm.
taking care of myself to take care of everyone else throughout the week than sacrificing my peace of mind for like something that may or may not have like blew up my whole week in terms of being able to take care of myself and other people.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like Tiffany, maybe another way I'm picturing this is like the rhythm of your body and the needs. And when you roll with that and honor that, things can flow very well versus like trying to swim against upstream. And I'm not trying to be silly, but like, salmon literally can do that because that's what almost they're built for their life is to navigate that journey, go back to where they hatched as an egg and go, and it's this really cool thing. But like if you're not a salmon and you're trying to do that, it doesn't work out. You're just fighting the current, maybe making a little progress, maybe not. And so I think it's a really good moment of like paying attention to what is or isn't needed, and what can be helpful or not helpful. Yeah, and so it's saying no. And I think as we're recording this and when this comes out, like if you get invited to 10 holiday parties, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I don't know. I'm just making up a big number. There's a commercial going on right now. I won't plug the product, but they're like, you got invited to five. But it's like if you feel like you have like holiday productions and events and traditions and this and that, and you don't feel like you get any space, and you know what happens to yourself. This is for me. I know what happens if I don't take time for myself. I'm either going to yeah, there's just a few. I'm either going to plan the time to decompress, or I will start literally shutting down, and then I'm going to just get completely overwhelmed, and then I'm not going to enjoy anything I'm doing, and I won't be able to handle the commitments I need to be able to handle. And so that's something that I have to monitor for myself. Um, it's growth and therapy and other things and people who check me, but that's a thermometer I have to read myself. I can't, and now sometimes I need someone to help me read it. But really, I have to be checking that thermometer because I know more what's underneath the surface, underneath the hood of the car. I know what's going on for me. And that's a check and I got to do every day. Sorry.
No, no, that reminded me of a wonderful metaphor I had heard from one of my fitness instructors that your body is kind of like a car. If you're not changing your oil and rotating your tires and making sure you're doing appropriate maintenance, you're gonna have all kinds of lights that come on and it's gonna be almost impossible to fix all the issues at once. Um,
Man, we're just hitting it with these allegories and analogies. I love that we're recovered from me not understanding them. So this is good. We're really hitting it good. But no, that's a wonderful example of like being a human is just so tough. And there's just times where it's like it doesn't even feel possible sometimes. So this the just the caveat I know I keep throwing some is just check in with yourself of where you're at. I don't want someone who's maybe newly in therapy or newly aware of these wounds to hear like, oh, you gotta like ignore that, gaslight yourself. That's not what we're saying. But we're also not saying never go to things that make you uncomfortable. It's like there's this balance, and I would just argue you as an individual person will know what is feasible and what is not, and then go to trusted, safe people who can give you that feedback. Not just anyone, because like you don't need feedback from like if that's your therapist, if it's your partner, if it's family, if it's a friend, if it's a coworker, if it's your kid. Maybe your dog could let you know. I don't know. Sometimes my dog's just like, you need to slow down. They give me a look. So I don't know, but just go to someone you trust. Don't just go to anyone and decide on some of this.
yeah, yeah, just having trusted support systems is super important. So Eric mentioned that he wanted to talk a little bit about some Gottman techniques or theories that can be applied.
Yeah, I so the Gottman method is like a couples therapy interventions, but there's a lot of cool application for families. And so one of the things we talk about with the Gottman method is just like uh taking a break. And so not in the sense of like, hey, I'm taking a break from our relationship, but like in a conversation in a moment when it gets overwhelming, like taking a break looks like stepping away for 15 minutes and catching your breath and doing some of the stuff we're talking about, not just staying in the conversation. So if we think about Tiffany and I are aligned on so many things. I'm sure we could find something we're not. But if I just pretend Tiffany and I are having a conversation where we're not aligned, and it starts to get heated, and like we're both getting kind of upset, this idea of like maybe just taking a break would be helpful if it's starting to get where it's harder to think clearer thoughts. It's harder to not interrupt. It's harder to not want to start attacking that person. That's a good, those are like yellow, like heavy yellow flags that this needs to be done. So just exiting that conversation, taking a break, finding something else to do. Um, those are all positive things that can be done. But the other piece of this that I think goes with the taking a break is the 2 minute rule. So typically in a conversation argument, you kind of know how that's going to go within the first 2 minutes. This is from the Gottmans, and they're very wise. And if you want more free resources, they have a great website at the Gottman Institute. They're always putting out really cool free content. But the 2 minute rule is 2 minutes into the conversation, checking in of like, okay, is this going to escalate or not? Because the Gottmans found with like 95% accuracy that they could watch just 2 minute clips of an argument of a couple and predict, does this de escalate or does this keep going? And what they were looking at is things you can probably imagine: the interruptions, the contempt, the stonewalling, the defensiveness. They looked at like, the escalation, the energy, the nonverbals. So just trusting yourself. I will throw one more caveat that you don't always need to wait 2 minutes to know if it's not going to go good. So if that family member comes in hot and heavy and is like, where you been? What you been doing? Why do you miss everything? Da, 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 da. You think you're better than us? You don't need to wait 2 minutes to know that that's probably not the conversation you want to have if you're barely hanging in there just to be there. Tiffany.
Yeah, you going through those things are very at least from my mind, they sound very like what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah,
Practical.
those
Okay.
are very practical skills that like to use and to know, but also being aware that like some people aren't aware that these are skills. So like you might have someone who follows you around when you're trying to like create space. Um, so just being aware that some people might not respect your ability to use these very practical skills.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they don't see them as practical skills. They see them as not being in a cycle. And so if we talk about cycles, like every year at Thanksgiving, you fight about politics, and there's the year you don't do it, it's going to stand out. And so it will, if we go back to developmental psychology, there's like this extinction of the behavior, which means it just gets a little worse before it goes away. And so that may be that you need to just take a step back and be like, I'm just not exiting this conversation. I'll catch you a little later. Um, not doing it like this today.
Yeah. Ooh, hard question for you, that comes to mind. When you're teaching people these skills, has anyone ever asked you, how do you handle a person who's telling you you're being weak or you're by walking away and taking space from the conversation versus like staying and like working through it and just trudging through it and solving the issue?
Oh, Tiffany's always asking the good, hard questions. It's hard to do this without getting like a little zoomed out, kind of philosophical. If I know that that conversation's not safe for me, and I know that it doesn't have any fruit for me, like if I stay in this conversation, I play this cycle out, there is nothing positive for me, or a very small chance of something positive for me, then I don't need to worry about exiting the conversation and what that means, like from a philosophical standpoint. Now, I'm going to make this a little harder. There are some family members who I love in my life, and we do not see the world the same. And that's okay. Uh, in that, sometimes I'm just like, hey, I need to be done with this conversation. This isn't going to be something that's helpful for us to continue on. Now, the first time that happened, it was a big problem that I said that. Um, they, I think, grew to respect my boundaries, and now we have an enhanced relationship because we are not, I'm not crossing their boundaries, they're not crossing mine. But if someone's not able to respect your boundaries, I would argue, what level of relationship and closeness should you have with someone that is not able to respect your boundaries? And I think sometimes I've worked with patients and clients of they have been in this like what I ought to be doing, what I should be doing. I want the picture of everybody at Christmas and it looks picture perfect and everyone's, in a happy mindset, but that's not real life. And for a lot of people, that's not the reality. And so rather than like dishonoring themselves and going, they've taken space for themselves.
Hmm. Yeah, you were
So
saying that this isn't real life. Something that came to mind for me that I often use, people might shade me for it. It's just like this isn't a Hallmark movie. Like,
we're really going after Hallmark today. I'm just gonna have to say, if
well,
we
it's
get any
because
letters,
everything
I
is
would just
so
like to
perfect.
say Hallmark ornaments I find delightful. And I'm just like, how do they make these things? And some of them are gigantic. So Hallmark, if you do come after us, I would just like to say I'm very open to like ornament a year deal and I'll plug you all you want. But sorry, I'm just like, we're just really going after them today, Tiffany. We're just like, yeah,
No, like
get
nothing
out of here.
against them. Like they have some really touching movies, but like we have to remember like what we see in media and social media, the movies, Disney's a good one too that does it. All of those, like everything always works out movies, they're not real. Like it's not very often, maybe like 1% of the time where everything's going to be like picture perfect and there's absolutely no hitches.
So you mean that I'm not going to go back to my hometown and meet the carpenter that's still single, my old flame, and then fall in love at the end of a tree in time for Christmas? Are you telling me that that's not a possibility for me and that's not real life? How dare you?
Not a super
We will.
realistic idea.
No, I think we need to do a soapbox on Hallmark movies because I have some strong takes. But no, I think I don't want. I know we're kind of being silly, but sometimes we need some humor and levity when we're talking about things this heavy. But I want to just make sure that I emphasize, like Tiffany's correct that it's not real life. I don't know. I just and I just sometimes what we see on social media it feels real and like it's what we're feeding our mind and like if we know that if we eat salads and we eat healthy diet that it helps our mental health like we have to acknowledge that what we feed our brain of like social media and just books and community interactions that has an impact and you can say well I can handle it I'm tough like that's great. That's great. There's also reasons why we're not robots. And so acting like you are is not a strength. It's just like gonna hurt you somewhere else. And so I mean, I don't know. I just think about the toughest people I've met in my whole life. And like, I don't think I don't know. I feel like it's like going to a veteran. It's like, well, if you're really tough, you'd be able to redeploy right away. It's like, that's one, not allowed, right? And two, it shouldn't be allowed because they know if you go right back to back without those breaks, your odds of PTSD, injuries, all these things go up. So it's like we would never say that to a veteran. And so I'm kind of like, why are we not just being real about some of this and what is and isn't possible? Like I think need to stop focusing on what we think other people think we should be doing and focusing on what's actually realistic for ourselves and healthiest for ourselves. Um, yeah, it's all very complicated and very personal. So we want to try to give information and practical advice, but also never step on someone's like personal journey with anything. But I would really just try to honor your inner wisdom, your inner experience, try to explore what that is, because sometimes that's the first step to knowing like what is a safe situation, what is not. Uh, and some of these conversations just honestly are not worth having. I can say that with a lot of privilege as a white heterosexual male in America. There's a lot of privilege in saying that. So I want to just give this recognition that there are some conversations that are worth having, and that's how we bring change about is by having some of these conversations and pushing and challenging. And there's certainly things they feel strong about. But I would just throw this out that if every single issue in the world you are throwing down on and you are pushing on and it's every issue is that big it may be worth visiting like what is that costing you and like what is the impact of that both in changing the system but both for yourself and I don't know I won't get all meta but I've seen how I've been more effective by focusing on the things I am going to push on and the things I am going to challenge so like for me it's ridiculous bigoted languages about people in recovery or people in addiction. If I see that, I'm going to throw down I'm literally going to throw down every time because I think there's no place for that in 2024. But because that's one of the things I'm pushing on, I feel like that is a worthwhile conversation to have. But I think if I was doing that for every single thing I disagreed with, I think it would minimize my effectiveness. So I'm going to allow Tiffany to check me, of course, but that's just some of the things I would throw out.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Like and again, people might shade me for this, but like I have limited my bubble of things that I'm willing to commit my energy and time to. It's not because I don't care. It's not because I don't want to like have hands and feet in every single thing that,
Yeah,
but like I can't. I'm one human and I have to choose things that align with my values to support.
yeah. And I think we all can have some level of care. I just think it's just complicated. And there's like 1,000 issues like I could say in the next sentence. And it's like, yeah, that's important. And I think it's just holding space that there's only so much we can really be informed about and know about, even if we're reading a lot of news and staying up to date. And so it's like, it's just kind of impossible for some of these very nuanced things to have, oh man, I really know. So it's kind of it is picking and choosing. And we could have a great conversation about which things do we pick and focus on and why. But yeah, I don't know. There's just certain things that I think we have to talk about. And so why I'm giving all these caveats is like I think about my queer family, friends, and clients. And I think about some of them have had horrible traumatic experiences. And so I want to make sure we're not saying to those people with those experiences, oh, like, yeah, that's tough. You just need to deal with it. Like, if someone's denying your existence, denying your rights, it's a very different conversation. And that's not a time where there's going to be nuance like, there's just some things that are fundamental issues that, are maybe a, hey, well, you'll probably not be in my life kind of thing. So, um, it's just very complicated. And that's like, I think that's one of the interesting things about doing this podcast, Tiffany, is like we really try to get into zoomed out, but also specific. But I can just see everyone's situation's a little bit different. And that's kind of one of those red flags we look out for in therapists. And Tiff and I talk about this. If every single client someone sees gets the same treatment, the same goals, the same schedule, like that's a problem. That's not a strength. Even if you're seeing the same presentation, ADHD or PTSD, if it's always the same thing, beyond the first session, like that would be a problem because everyone's life's different. Everyone's needs are different. Symptomology can be grouped together, but it needs to be getting personalized, or it's not just like this isn't like an elitist thing. This is just like you're not doing effective care. And if you're a patient, you're not getting the best out of what you're putting in if it's not getting personalized to what you're doing and what you need.
Yeah, yeah. And like I think something that comes to mind for me is where people are like, oh, it's a worksheet, one of those worksheet therapists. And I'm like, I'm a little guilty of that. But even like when I give my clients like exercises or worksheets, no two worksheets are going to be the same. Like in terms of
Mhm.
exercises, they will, but everyone's answers and experiences will be different. And from there, that's when the tailoring comes in to really like enhance and validate. Like that's how you experience anxiety, or that's how you experience depression. Like let's look at now what's going to work for you.
Yeah, I love that. So if you were only going to remember one thing that we've all said, I would really just be like, honor your inner wisdom, honor your inner experience. Do not deny the
Yeah.
pieces you're working through, and to also really just listen to that wisdom. And also, as much as you can, plan ahead for some of these things. And if you're going with other people, just communicate with them like what your plan is and how you'll handle. And if there's somebody you're in particular worried about being a trigger, like just maybe communicate that with who you're going with. Really feel like I would be remiss if I didn't say this. When we talk about all these situations, we have been kind of focusing on like people saying the wrong thing or starting an altercation, like a just an argument, a verbal argument. We are not meaning to say that this is advice anyone should be taking going to be around situations where there are like known abusers, domestic violence, sexual abuse, molestation, anything like that. So this advice does not apply in those situations. That I would argue could never be a safe situation for someone to go back into. So that is not what this advice is curtailed to. This is more of the the people in your life who say the wrong thing, kind of try to pick at you and start a fight, a verbal altercation. That's what we're talking about today. I would say pretty much exclusively. I'm going to throw it to Tiffany.
Yeah, I'm gonna hopefully this analogy or metaphor lands with you. But I always remind people like, yes, life isn't a game, but there's nothing wrong with approaching it the same way you would approach a game. Eric mentioned he plays Fortnite. I can imagine he's customized his skins, he's customized, all of the things that are customized to what he preferences in terms of how he wants to play the game. Just remembering like it is your journey. You're allowed to personalize your journey in a way that like embodies you and embraces your values and really allows you to speak to who you are as a person.
I liked it. I think I understood it better than my answer I got wrong.
There's no right or wrong answers.
Are there though? Because I said no, and it definitely felt like the wrong answer. And I feel like when we listen to the recording, we're gonna know that it was the wrong answer.
That's okay. Everyone will be like, oh, what?
I would just throw out a plug. If there are any topics or specifics, not like specific situations, but like in general situations or things that would be helpful, like how to handle during the holidays, please just message us. We do love you guys who send us some ideas and feedback. I think it can make it helpful, and we're not going to give you a shout out if you don't want people to know you listen to our podcast. So just if you throw out the idea, you can be like, "Hey, I don't want my name mentioned," but if you have anything that can be helpful or interesting, we really do want this to be a free, helpful resource for people during a difficult time. So if anybody has anything like that or any suggestions, we welcome the feedback. We've gotten some really great feedback from people, so we welcome any of it.
Yeah. And just to wrap us in and wrap up, we have some exciting things in the works. Hopefully soon-ish, we start throwing some case studies at you guys of like pop culture media people, so you can really like roast us on our views of that. Um,
I mean, half the fun. I think we've offended a lot of the Hallmark people, so I just feel like we're like, well, you've obviously never watched 25 Days of Christmas, and they'll be like, I think it starts with Halloween, but I don't know. 60, maybe I'm getting the ABC Family. I remember I used to love that. Like watching Harry Potter with it all extended. I think Harry Potter is a Christmas movie and a Halloween movie, but we probably don't have enough time for that today. But I would just argue it qualifies for both. And so does Die Hard.
hey, no,
Okay.
no judgment here. Uh, that being said, you can also follow us on Spotify. You can find us on other major listening platforms. We do have a Patreon. You can feel free to subscribe and listen there. There's a lot of free content there as well. We just look forward to hearing from you and continuing to grow with you guys.